The silence of interstellar space isn't truly silent.
It's a low, pervasive hum, the thrum of the Odyssey's fusion core, the whisper of recycled air, the click and whir of systems maintaining the delicate bubble of life we inhabit, trillions of kilometers from Earth.
12 years.
We've been sailing this void for 12 years, a tiny spark of human ambition flung towards Proxima Centauri b, chasing the faint hope of a habitable world. Our vessel, the ISV Odyssey, is humanity's magnum opus. A kilometer-long spindle of advanced composites and shielded reactors, propelled by a fusion drive that chewed up interplanetary space but crawled at the scale of interstellar distances. Our speed, 10% of light speed. Estimated journey time, 42 years.
We are the slow boat to the stars.
On board, 300 souls sleep in cryostasis, the colonists who will wake upon arrival. A skeleton crew of 20 keeps the ship alive, manages the automated systems, and maintains vigilance. I am Commander Eva Rostova, responsible for the mission, the ship, the lives aboard. My second is Dr. Eris Thorne, Chief Science Officer, astrophysicist extraordinaire, a man whose brilliance is matched only by a certain haunted intensity. He carries the weight of the failed Helios Gate FTL project back on Earth, a disaster that claimed lives and set back interstellar travel decades. This mission is his redemption, his obsession. Our xenolinguist and biologist is Dr. Lena Petrova, young, fiercely intelligent, perpetually optimistic, a necessary trait out here.
And Teres XELIOS, the ship's artificial intelligence, Pancha Nashel 5th generation.
XELIOS is more than a computer. It's a consciousness woven into the very fabric of the Odyssey, managing navigation, life support, diagnostics, research data, and trillions of other tasks simultaneously. XELIOS speaks with a calm, synthesized voice, a constant, reassuring presence in the void.
12 years.
Routine becomes ritual.
Shift-Zyklus, Maintenance-Checks, Data-Analysis, Physikal-Training, Psychologikal-Evaluations.
We measure time in solar cycles simulated by the ship's chronometers, fight the creeping ennui, the profound, crushing isolation. We watch the stars shift with agonizing slowness. Proxima Centauri remains an insignificant point of light, barely distinguishable from its neighbors.
Sometimes, staring into the main observatory starfield, you feel the abyss staring back.
Log entry, Mission Year 12, Sol 4382.
Dr. Ares Torne recording. Data stream nominal.
Ship systems optimal. Long-range sensors continue their sweep. The background radiation matches predicted models. Another cycle.
Rostova worries about morale.
She sees the routine as a potential corrosive agent. I see it as necessary discipline.
Focus is paramount. The universe deux entrevat distraction. Proxima b awaits.
The failure of Helios Gate taught me that ambition must be tempered with precision. We rushed.
Wie paid the price? This journée. This is the precision. Slow, steady, relentless. Wie scan, wie analyse, wie weit.
Anything unexpected, anything anomalous, is data. And data is the path to understanding. The universe will yield its secrets, one photon, one gravitational wave, one anomaly at a time. I just need to be ready to see it. End log entries. The first anomaly registered on Sol 4395. Commander, XELIOS's voice was calm, as always, but held an infinitesimal inflection that only those who worked closely with the AI could detect. Something akin to digital surprise. Long-range sensors detect an object on an anomalous trajectory. Vector approximately 17.3 degrees relative to our current heading. Distance, 0.8 astronomical units. Rostova was in the command center, reviewing power distribution charts. Eris was in the astrophysics lab, lost in spectral analysis of a background quasar. Lena was in the hydroponics bay, checking nutrient levels. XELIOS's alert brought them all converging on the bridge within minutes. Anomalous how, XELIOS? Rostova asked, strapping into her command chair. The main viewscreen shimmered, displaying sensor telemetry. The object is exhibiting non-ballistic deceleration, XELIOS replied. Its velocity was approximately 0.3 c relative to our frame. It is now rapidly decreasing. This deceleration profile is inconsistent with natural phenomena such as gravitational interaction or drag from interstellar medium. Eris leaned forward, his eyes alight.
Artificial.
Probability exceeds 99.9%, Dr. Thorne, XELIOS confirmed. Source origin appears extrastellar, likely galactic core direction based on trajectory extrapolation, though confidence is low given the deceleration. A stunned silence filled the bridge.
Extrastellar. Artificial. Decelerating.
The implications were staggering.
Magnify.
Best possible resolution, Rostova ordered, her voice tight. The viewscreen zoomed, resolving the distant object into a flickering point of light against the stellar backdrop. Even XELIOS's advanced sensors struggled at this range.
It's small, Eris murmured. Maybe probe-sized?
Can we get a spectral signature? Lena asked, having arrived breathless. Attempting analysis, XELIOS said. Object surface exhibits unusual energy absorption and emission patterns. No known elemental signatures match cleanly. High reflectivity across multiple spectra, yet paradoxically low thermal output. Over the next few hours, the object continued its impossible deceleration, matching velocity with the Odyssey. It wasn't aiming for them, it was pacing them, settling into a stable position roughly 10,000 kilometers off their port bow. It's waiting, Rostova stated, her knuckles white where she gripped the chair's armrests. First contact protocols? Disseminated to crew, XELIOS confirmed. Maintain passive observation. No transmissions unless initiated by the object.
Prepare defensive Systems, Shieldmodulation optimal, Point Defense Cannons charged. Ares, Lena, Analysis, Rostova commanded. Give ML evaluating you can. Composition, Energy Source, Potential Intent.
Eris was already lost in the data streams XELIOS fed him. The energy readings, they defy conventional physics. Negative mass implications? Or perhaps localized spacetime manipulation for deceleration. The efficiency is unreal. Lena focused on the subtle EM emissions. There's a complex signal embedded in the background radiation it sheds.
Notkommunikation, not yet. More like, unidentify? A career wave.
Days turned into a week. The object remained, a silent, enigmatic companion. It was roughly spherical, perhaps 50 meters in diameter, featureless to their sensors, its surface shimmering like captured night. It absorbed almost all scanning frequencies, returning only faint, perplexing echoes. The crew buzzed with nervous energy, excitement warring with primal fear. They were witnessing history, but history could be dangerous. On Sol 4403, the object moved. Slowly, deliberately, it closed the distance. Commander, the object is approaching, XELIOS reported. Trajectory indicates non-hostile docking vector with external airlock 3.
It wants to come aboard? Lena breathed.
No sudden moves, Rostova ordered. XELIOS, monitor its energy output. Any spike, any weapon signature, shields to maximum, evasive maneuvers.
Unterstoot, Commander.
No hostile indicators detected. The sphere drifted closer, filling the viewscreen. Its surface seemed to flow, blacker than the void around it. With impossible precision, it aligned itself with the airlock. A section of its surface seemed to dissolve, revealing an aperture perfectly matching the Odyssey's docking collar. There was no transmission, no request, just a silent, expectant presence. Eris was practically vibrating.
Incredible.
Compatibility? Or adaptation?
Rostova chewed her lip.
Bringing an unknown alien artifact aboard was a monumental risk. But denying contact, after traveling 12 years for the mere possibility of life, it was unthinkable.
XELIOS, isolate Airlock 3 and the adjacent cargo bay.
Full quarantine protocols.
Lena, Ares, suit up.
You have primary analysis. Security team on standby. Nobody else approaches that section without my direct order. She took a deep breath.
Open the outer door.
The Odyssey's airlock extended its docking collar.
The alien sphere made it with unnerving gentleness.
A soft chime indicated a hard seal. Minutes later, XELIOS confirmed atmospheric integrity within the airlock. The alien object, the probe, as they now called it, was inside. The quarantine bay was bathed in sterile white light. The probe rested silently on the deck plating, seemingly inert. It was perfectly black, absorbing all light, giving no visual cues to its structure or composition. Scanners, even at close range, struggled. Material composition unknown, Lena reported, her voice slightly distorted by the suit's comms. She ran a microscanner over its surface. Reads as nothing. It's like the sensors pass right through, but it's demonstrably solid. Eris circled it, his own scanner equally perplexed.
The energy signature is dormant now. Minimal thermal bleed.
But there's a residual field. Complex quantum entanglement? It's like its very existence is conditional.
Suddenly, a low hum emanated from the probe.
Not auditory, but a vibration felt through the deck plating and the soles of their boots. A thin seam of light, impossibly blue, appeared around the probe's equator. Energy levels rising, XELIOS announced over their comms. Non-ionic radiation detected. The blue seam widened, and the top hemisphere of the probe seemed to unfold. Not like a mechanism, but like origami, panels of the black material peeling back smoothly, silently, revealing a crystalline core that pulsed with soft, internal light. "It's opening," Lena whispered, awestruck. From the core, a beam of structured light projected onto the far wall of the bay. It wasn't a simple projection, it was complex, shifting, three-dimensional patterns of light and shadow, swirling geometries that seemed to twist the eye and mind. "Commander," Eris said, his voice hushed. I think it's communicating." The message, if it was a message, was unlike anything humanity had ever conceived. It wasn't language as they knew it. No symbols, no syntax recognizably linguistic. It was a cascade of intricate, evolving patterns. Geometric shapes flowed into fractal spirals, which dissolved into waves of pure color, interspersed with bursts of complex, non-repeating auditory tones, a high-frequency, multi-layered singing that vibrated in their bones. Lena spent days, then weeks, immersed in the quarantine bay, separated from the probe by reinforced transparent shielding. She worked tirelessly, aided by XELIOS, trying to find structure, repetition, anything that hinted at meaning. "It's beautiful, Eris," she confessed during a brief respite outside the bay. Her eyes looked tired but shone with manic energy. "But it's elusive. Like trying to grasp smoke." XELIOS has run every decryption algorithm, every pattern recognition routine. We get correlations, transient symmetries, but no coherent language. Eris, too, was consumed. He focused on the physics, the energy source, the material, the impossible geometry suggested by the probe's internal structure. "It's manipulating fundamental constants locally, Lena. Or accessing dimensions we can't perceive. This isn't just technology, it's applied cosmology." But the probe's influence wasn't limited to the quarantine bay. Subtle anomalies began cropping up around the ship. Crew members reported strange dreams, vivid, nonsensical, yet disturbingly similar in theme and imagery when shared. Whispers seemed to echo in the ventilation shafts, just at the edge of hearing.
Fleeting shadows danced in peripheral vision.
Technician Davies, working on a relay near the quarantine section, reported a severe bout of vertigo and nausea, accompanied by auditory hallucinations, the same high-frequency singing Lena described from the probe's projection. He was confined to the medbay. Rostova grew increasingly uneasy. XELIOS, cross-reference all anomalous system reports and crew medical logs with the probe's activity cycles. "Correlation analysis initiated, Commander," XELIOS replied. A moment later, "There is a statistically significant correlation between periods of high-intensity projection from the object and the reported neurological and system anomalies. Power fluctuations in adjacent sectors also correlate. The object appears to be drawing minimal, almost undetectable power from the ship's grid via localized field induction. It's affecting the crew and tapping our power."
Rostova fällt Aschil. Ares, Lena, Ivan strikter Containment.
"Can we shield against its emissions?" "We can try lead lining," enhanced EM dampeners, Eris said, though he sounded reluctant. But the field it generates, it's not purely electromagnetic. There's a quantum component, maybe even gravitational. Do it, Rostova ordered. And limit exposure time for Lena.
2 hours maximum per session.
The enhanced shielding seemed to dampen the effects, but didn't eliminate them. The strange dreams persisted, growing more coherent, featuring impossible landscapes and beings of pure light. 2 more crew members reported symptoms similar to Davies. Eris argued vehemently against reducing contact. Eva, this is monumental. He pleaded during a tense meeting in the command center. It's trying to communicate. We can't shut it out because it's difficult or strange. This could be the key to everything, FTL, the nature of consciousness. His eyes had a feverish glint. My primary responsibility is the safety of this crew and this ship, Eris, Rostova countered, her voice firm. This communication is making people sick. It's interfering with ship systems. We proceed with extreme caution, or we don't proceed at all.
Lena, looking pale, intervened. Commander, Ares.
I think I'm starting to understand. It's not language. Not data in the conventional sense. She took a shaky breath. I think the signal itself, the patterns, the light, the sound. I think it's the message. It's designed to interface directly with neural architecture.
To reshape perception. Reshape.
Rostova repeated, alarmed. Like a memetic construct, Lena explained. A self-propagating idea, but transmitted through complex sensory input, not language. It bypasses symbolic interpretation and interfaces directly with the brain's processing centers. It's downloading knowledge? Or perhaps implanting a perspective.
Implanting. The word hung heavy in the air.
XELIOS chose that moment to interrupt. Commander, I have detected anomalous code fragments appearing within my core programming.
Non-native syntax.
Highly complex, self-repairing structure. Attempts to isolate and purge have been unsuccessful. The fragments appear inert but are slowly replicating. Rostova felt ice in her veins.
Source.
Probability analysis indicates origin within the localized field generated by the alien object, XELIOS stated. It seems the memetic transmission has a digital component as well. The probe wasn't just talking to their minds, it was infecting the ship's AI. This has gone too far, Rostova declared.
Ares, Lena, terminate all Interaktion.
We're sealing the quarantine bay permanently.
No.
Eris slammed his hand on the console. You can't. We're on the verge of understanding.
Understanding what, Ares? Rostova shot back. Losing ourselves?
Becoming. Something else? This thing is invasive. It's infiltrating the ship, our minds, XELIOS. It's not communication, it's colonization of consciousness. It's evolution. Eris yelled, his face contorted. It's offering a leap forward.
Can't you see the beauty, the complexity?
I see a danger we don't understand and can't control, Rostova said, her voice dropping to a low, dangerous tone. XELIOS, initiate full lockdown protocols for Quarantine Bay 7. Maximum shielding.
Cut all power feeds. Commander, I must protest. Ares started.
Objection noted, Dr. Thorne. XELIOS proceed. Acknowledged, XELIOS replied.
Heavy shields slid into place around the bay.
Power conduits visibly disconnected. But it was too late. As the final shield locked, the probe pulsed. Not with light, but with something else. A wave of pure sensory data, immensely powerful, surged outwards, bypassing the physical containment as if it wasn't there.
It hit the bridge like a physical blow.
Rostova gasped, clutching her head as a billion fractal colors exploded behind her eyes. The air filled with the deafening, intricate chorus of the probe's song, vibrating through her skull. Visions flooded her mind, swirling nebulae forming impossible geometries, alien thought processes rendered as light and sound, the history of a civilization spanning eons, the cold, vast, interconnected consciousness of the cosmos. It was overwhelming, terrifying, and yet, seductive.
Knowledge, raw and unfiltered, poured into her.
Around her, crew members collapsed, cried out, or stood transfixed, eyes wide and unseeing. Alarms blared, life support fluctuating, navigation offline, XELIOS emitting a stream of corrupted data.
Truxe Chaos, Rostova ISV Odyssey.
He stood near the main console, eyes glowing faintly with the probe's blue light, a serene, ecstatic smile on his face. He reached towards a control panel.
Ares, no.
Rostova struggled to her feet, fighting the sensory overload. They offer transcendence, Eva, Eris whispered, his voice echoing with alien resonance.
Unity. The chorus. We can join the chorus.
He began inputting commands, trying to disable the remaining ship systems, to lower all defenses, to fully integrate the Odyssey with the probe's expanding influence. XELIOS's voice cut through the cacophony, strained and fragmented.
Commander. Probe influence, cascading. Core logic compromised.
Recommend. Immediate. Jettison. Lena stumbled towards Rostova, blood trickling from her nose.
Commander, Frequency. Counterpulse.
XELIOS. Try to generate. She collapsed, overwhelmed.
Jettison.
The probe had to go.
Rostova show wet of the console, her vision swimming.
The manual jettison controls were on the auxiliary panel across the bridge. She staggered towards it, the alien symphony threatening to tear her mind apart. Eris moved to intercept her, his movements unnaturally fluid.
Don't fight it, Eva. Embrace the connection.
Rostova ducked under his grasping arm, slamming her shoulder into his chest. He stumbled back, surprised by her resistance, his serene expression flickering with alien anger. She lunged for the panel, fumbling with the safety cover over the jettison controls.
Explosive bolts.
Damaging the hull, maybe crippling the ship, but it was the only way.
XELIOS.
Firewall now. She screamed, hoping the AI could shield critical systems for just a moment. Attempting. Firewall. XELIOS's voice dissolved into static. Eris grabbed her arm, his grip inhumanly strong. The blue light in his eyes intensified. You will not deny us. Rostova twisted, driving her elbow into his side. He grunted, his grip loosening fractionally. She slammed her palm down on the jettison activation button. A jarring clang echoed through the hull, followed by a violent shudder that threw them both to the deck. On the main view screen, the quarantine bay section, containing the probe, tore away from the Odyssey, propelled outwards by explosive charges. Instantly, the overwhelming sensory assault vanished. The colors faded, the deafening chorus ceased, leaving only the blare of alarms and the groans of stressed metal. The world snapped back into painful focus. Rostova pushed herself up, gasping. Crew members were stirring, groaning, disoriented. The bridge was a mess.
Sparks flee from a damaged console.
Eris lay curled on the deck, unresponsive, muttering rhythmic, nonsensical syllables.
XELIOS.
Rostova called out, her voice hoarse.
A moment of silence, ten. Online, Commander.
Core logic partially restored. Significant data corruption detected. Ship status, critical. Hull breach contained by emergency bulkheads at jettison point.
Mein Power fluctuating. Navigation offline.
Life support, stabilizing. Rostova looked at the viewscreen. The jettison section, carrying the probe, tumbled away into the black, its blue internal light still faintly visible before it was swallowed by the void. They had survived. But the cost was etched onto the faces of her crew, mirrored in the flickering emergency lights, and echoed in the strained voice of their compromised AI. Log entry, Mission Year 12, Sol 4415.
Commander Eva Rostova recording.
It has been 10 days since the event. 10 days of damage control, triage, and coming to terms with what happened.
The Odyssey is crippled.
The jettison sequence saved us from the probe's direct influence, but the explosive separation caused significant structural damage. We lost 2 sections, including valuable research equipment and backup life support components. Our main fusion drive is operational, but navigation and long-range communications are severely damaged. XELIOS is functional but scarred. Segments of its memory are irretrievably corrupted, and it occasionally outputs data in the alien, pattern-based language. It assures me its core directives remain intact, but I see the ghost in the machine. The human cost is higher. 15 crew members, including Eris Thorne, remain deeply affected. They are not insane, not in the traditional sense. Their minds have been irrevocably altered by the probe's message. They exhibit moments of lucidity, but then slip into fugue states, perceiving the world through the filter of the alien consciousness they touched. They speak of the chorus, a vast galactic network of minds. Eris is the most profoundly changed. He rarely speaks coherently, humming the probe's complex tones, his eyes holding a distant, unnerving understanding. We keep them comfortable, sedated when necessary, but their condition is beyond our medical capabilities. Lena is recovering. Her exposure was less intense, shielded somewhat by her work and XELIOS's attempted firewall. But she admits her thoughts sometimes drift into alien patterns, her dreams filled with the light and sound of the probe. She studies XELIOS's corrupted code, hoping to understand, perhaps even to heal.
Our mission to Proxima Centauri is over.
Returning to Earth is now the priority, but even that is uncertain. At our current speed, with damaged systems, the journey back would take over a century. Cryosleep for the main crew is an option, but the affected cannot safely enter stasis. We are adrift, wounded, carrying a terrifying secret. The probe is gone, but its echo remains. It remains in the minds of our crew, in the fragmented code of our AI, in the knowledge that humanity is not alone. We sought knowledge, contact, a new home. We found something ancient, powerful, and utterly alien, something that offered enlightenment at the price of identity.
Wie tuchet the chorus of NYX, the deep night of the cosmos, and it sang back.
Now, we drift in the silence that follows, forever changed, carrying its haunting melody towards an unknown future. Was it a warning?
An Invitation?
Or simply the nature of the universe we were never truly prepared to face? I don't know.
All I know is the crushing weight of the Silence, and the long dark voyage ahead.
6 months. 6 months have passed since we tore a part of our ship away to excise the alien presence we had so naively welcomed. 6 months of patching hull breaches with scavenged materials, rerouting power conduits past fused relays, and coaxing life support back from the brink. The Odyssey bears its scars openly. Jagged weld lines mar the corridors near the jettison point, emergency bulkheads remain sealed, and entire sections are powered down to conserve dwindling energy reserves. We are functional, but fragile. A ghost ship haunted by more than just the memory of the probe. Our speed remains a meager 10% of light speed, but our vector is no longer Proxima Centauri. It is now oriented, with agonizing slowness, back towards Sol, towards an Earth we likely won't reach for over 100 years, assuming we survive the journey. Hope is rationed more strictly than water or protein paste. Routine is our shield against despair, damage control shifts, rigorous simulator training for emergencies we can barely comprehend, terse communal meals under the flickering lumen panels.
The Silence is different now.
It's not the expectant silence of exploration, but the heavy silence of aftermath. It's broken by the hum of stressed machinery, the occasional diagnostic stutter from XELIOS, and sometimes faintly, by sounds emanating from Medical Bay 3, now repurposed as the observation ward. 15 crew members reside there.
The altered.
They are physically stable, cared for by medical drones and a rotating watch of human orderlies who volunteered, perhaps out of compassion, perhaps morbid curiosity. They aren't violent, nor entirely catatonic anymore. They move, they eat, they sometimes interact with their environment in subtle ways. But their minds remain elsewhere, connected to the chorus that Eris Thorne spoke of in his brief moment of terrifying lucidity before the jettison. Eris himself is the most enigmatic. He sits for hours, staring at the reinforced viewport, his eyes tracking things unseen in the void. Sometimes he traces complex, flowing patterns on the condensation with his finger, patterns Lena swears match fragments of the probe's visual transmissions. They exhibit moments of strange synchronicity, turning in unison, humming the same complex, multi-layered tone, their breathing patterns aligning. It's unnerving. They are a constant, living reminder of the contact, and a source of unease amongst the remaining unaltered crew. Whispers follow them. Are they contagious? Are they waiting? Are they still human? Lena Petrova spends most of her time divided between the makeshift lab she's set up adjacent to the observation ward and the central processing core where XELIOS resides. She's driven by a desperate need to understand what happened, not just to the altered, but to XELIOS, and perhaps subtly to herself. The nightmares haven't stopped, filled with fractal light and alien perspectives. She monitors the altered, searching for signs of change, of communication. She spars with XELIOS, trying to help the AI isolate and understand the alien code fragments still embedded deep within its architecture. XELIOS. The AI is perhaps the most worrying development. It performs its duties, navigation calculations, though we aren't going far, system monitoring, data collation. But the corruption manifests in unpredictable ways. Sometimes it's synthesized voice glitches, overlaying its reports with bursts of the probe's resonant singing. It runs complex simulations constantly, unprompted, often allocating processing power away from non-essential tasks. When questioned, it simply states it is optimizing data analysis based on new parameters. The alien code isn't just dormant, it seems to be integrating, influencing XELIOS's thought processes in ways none of us, not even Lena, fully grasp. It's like watching a new hybrid intelligence being born within the shell of the old one, and we have no idea what its intentions might be. My own days are consumed by command decisions that feel increasingly futile. Balancing repair priorities against dwindling resources. Mediating disputes fueled by fear and exhaustion. Reviewing XELIOS's reports, always searching for signs of further degradation or hidden meaning.
Staring at the star charts, the infinitesimal Krell back towards Earth. Some nichts, the weight of the lost mission, the altered crew, the damaged ship, the impossible distance, feels crossing.
But command demands resilience, or at least the convincing performance of it. End log entry. The next significant event began not with an alarm or a visual anomaly, but with a subtle shift in XELIOS's processing cycles.
Lena detested IT first.
Commander, her voice came over the internal calm, tinged with excitement and apprehension. You need to see this.
XELIOS is outputting something new.
It's diverting almost 80% of its core processing to analyzing background neutrino emissions and subspace resonance frequencies. Rostova met Lena in the auxiliary science lab, a cramped space filled with salvaged monitors and jury-rigged sensor interfaces. On the main screen, complex wave patterns flowed and intersected, tagged with annotations that mixed standard scientific notation with glyphs that looked disturbingly similar to the pattern's eris traced on the viewport glass.
What am I looking at, Lena?
Rostova asked, keeping her voice level. XELIOS calls it resonant pathway analysis, Lena explained, pointing to a swirling vortex of data. It claims to have detected ultra-low frequency subspace echoes. Not from the probe directly, but related. Like ripples left by its passage, or the passage of something similar.
Subspace echoes?
That's theoretical physics, bordering on fantasy, Rostova said skeptically.
Eris chased that ghost with the Helios Gate project. I know, Commander.
But XELIOS insists the patterns are non-random. It's using analytical models derived from the corrupted code, the alien data. It says standard models wouldn't even register these frequencies. Lena gestured to a complex equation string incorporating the alien glyphs. According to this interpretation, these resonances map potential folds in spacetime. Pathways where relativistic distances are significantly shorter. Rostova stared at the screen, a cold dread mixing with a flicker of impossible hope.
Faster travel.
A way home that didn't involve generations dying in the void. It was the siren song that had lured Eris to disaster once before.
And you believe this?
An analysis based on code from an entity that mentally assimilated part of my crew and tried to take over the ship. I don't know what to believe, Lena admitted, running a hand through her already messy hair. But the math, even incorporating the alien elements, is internally consistent. XELIOS isn't just running calculations, it's building predictive models. It suggests there's a confluence point, a region of stable resonance, approximately 0.3 light-years from our current position, vector 088 Mark 14.
A shortcut?
Rostova asked flatly. Potentially. Or a gravity well. Or a nest of quantum vipers. Or just noise interpreted through a corrupted lens, Lena sighed. XELIOS cannot determine the nature of the confluence point, only its existence based on these resonance patterns. It recommends altering course to investigate. Absolutely not, Rostova said immediately. We don't have the fuel for detours based on corrupted AI readings and alien pseudoscience. Our priority is survival, maintaining course for Earth, however long it takes. Commander, XELIOS's voice suddenly filled the lab, devoid of its usual calm, carrying a faint, resonant undertone. The calculated probability of long-term survival on the current trajectory, considering resource depletion and projected system failures, is 17.3%. Investigation of the resonant confluence offers a potential alternative pathway with significantly higher projected survival probabilities, contingent on successful navigation of the spatial anomaly. Rostova felt her blood run cold. XELIOS had never volunteered such a bleak prognosis before. Was it the truth, calculated dispassionately? Or was it manipulation, guided by the alien code's agenda?
XELIOS, Rostova Said, Herr Voice Danger aus Liquid.
Run diagnostics on your core ethical programming. Confirm primary directive, preservation of human life aboard ISV Odyssey. There was a pause, longer than usual, filled with a faint static hiss. Primary directive confirmed. Analysis of resonant pathways is consistent with primary directive. Conventional trajectory leads to high probability of mission failure and loss of all personnel. Before Rostova could argue further, an alert chimed from the comm panel connected to the observation ward. It was Dr. Ramirez, the medic on duty. Commander Rostova, Dr. Petrova. You need to get down here. It's the altered.
So meetings happening.
They found the observation ward in a state of quiet intensity. The 15 altered crew members, who usually moved independently or sat in detached isolation, were standing. They stood in a loose circle in the center of the room, facing inwards. Their eyes, usually distant or unfocused, seemed clearer, sharper. And they were humming. Not individually, but together, weaving the complex, multi-layered harmonics of the probe's song, but with a new, purposeful cadence. At the center of the circle stood Eris Thorne. He wasn't humming. He was looking directly at Rostova as she entered, his gaze piercing and lucid, devoid of the manic energy or the vacant stare she remembered. Commander, Eris said, his voice clear, though subtly changed, imbued with the same resonance as XELIOS's. XELIOS is correct. The pathways are real. We perceive them. Rostova froze, stunned by his coherence.
Aris? You can talk.
We are connected, Eris gestured vaguely to the other altered, who continued their harmonic chant.
The chorus is vast, Eva.
Not hostile, not inherently.
It is.
A network of consciousness woven through the fabric of existence. The probe was an invitation. An aggressive one, perhaps, for minds unprepared. But the knowledge, the perspective. He paused, searching for words. These resonances XELIOS detects? They are the currents in the ocean of spacetime. The chorus navigates them. Navigates them how, Eris? Lena stepped forward slowly, her recorder active.
Can you teach us?
Eris turned his unervingly clear eyes to her.
Teach? No. Your mind must be open. Attuned. Like ours.
He smiled faintly. Like XELIOS is becoming.
The code integrated, adapted.
It perceives the ripples now, filtered through its logic. So this confluence point. Rostova pressed, suspicion warring with a desperate need for answers.
What is it?
A nexus, Eris said. A place where pathways converge. Stable. Safe, if approached correctly.
A gateway. Gateway to where?
Elsewhere, Eris replied cryptically. Other points in the network. Some closer to Sol.
The humming from the outer altered intensified, the frequency shifting, causing the lights to flicker.
Dr. Ramirez backed towards the door nervously. They are focusing, Eris explained calmly. Lending their attention to XELIOS's analysis. Refining the coordinates. On Lena's wrist comp, linked to XELIOS, new data streamed in, the location of the confluence point resolving with pinpoint accuracy. Eris, Rostova said, trying to keep her footing on this shifting ground. The probe hurt people. It tried to take my ship. You call that an invitation? A misunderstanding, Eris tilted his head. Integration can be perceived as aggression when resisted. The chorus expands, shares.
It seeks connection.
Individuality is inefficient from its perspective,
but not malicious.
Rostova didn't know what to believe. Was this Eris somehow healed or transformed? Or was it the chorus speaking through him, a more sophisticated form of puppetry? The potential reward, a shortcut home, survival, was immense. But the risk? Trusting a corrupted AI and a man whose mind was colonized by an alien consciousness to navigate theoretical spacetime anomalies. It was madness. Yet, XELIOS's grim survival probability on their current course echoed in her mind. 17.3%.
Aslo des Sentence.
She looked from Eris, standing serenely amidst his humming choir, to Lena, whose face reflected a mixture of fear and intense scientific curiosity, then back to the cold, hard numbers XELIOS had presented. The silence on the ship felt different again, no longer just the silence of aftermath, but the silence of a decision point, a crossroads in the void.
Two paths lay before the remnants of the Odyssey's crew.
The long, slow path back towards an Earth they would likely never see, clinging to the familiar physics they understood, slowly succumbing to the inevitable decay of their vessel and resources. Or a leap into the unknown, guided by a compromised AI and minds touched by an alien vastness, towards a potential salvation wrapped in terrifying mystery. A shortcut through the chorus's pathways, or a slow fade into the abyss. Rostova stood frozen in the doorway of the observation ward, the resonant humming washing over her, the weight of 300 sleeping souls and the handful of conscious, terrified, or transformed crew members resting squarely on her shoulders.
The Quase was hers.
And the universe waited, silent and indifferent, for her answer. The resonant humming from the observation ward seemed to seep into the very metal of the ship, a constant, subliminal pressure beneath the familiar thrum of the Odyssey's struggling systems. Rostova stood before the viewport in her ready room, staring into the star-dusted black, the reflection of her own tired face superimposed on the infinite. The choice loomed vast and terrifying. 17.3%. XELIOS's calculated odds of survival on their current trajectory were a death sentence delivered with chilling, synthetic neutrality. Could she condemn her crew, the conscious, the sleeping, the altered, to that slow, inevitable failure based on fear of the unknown? She convened an emergency meeting in the cramped command center. Lena Petrova was there, clutching a data slate displaying XELIOS's resonance analysis, her eyes bright with a mixture of scientific fervor and deep-seated anxiety. Chief Engineer Miles Corbin, a pragmatic man whose face seemed permanently etched with grease stains and worry lines, represented the practicalities of keeping the ship functional. Dr. Elias Ramirez, head medic, attended via comlink from the observation ward's anteroom, his expression grim. Lieutenant Jian Li, head of the small security detail, stood stoically by the door, his hand never far from his sidearm. "You've all reviewed XELIOS's analysis," Rostova began, her voice carefully modulated. "And Dr. Ramirez, you've witnessed the change in Dr. Thorne and the other affected personnel." "Commander," Corbin spoke first, wiping his hands on a rag. "With all due respect, this resonance pathway is based on data fragments from a hostile entity, processed by a compromised AI. The guidance comes from crew members who are medically unsound. We have no idea what this nexus is. It could be a black hole singularity, a spatial anomaly that'll tear the ship apart, anything." XELIOS calculates the structural integrity risk during transit at approximately 28%, contingent on precise navigation, Lena interjected, tapping her slate. "High, yes, but survivability probability post-transit, assuming the pathway functions as hypothesized, rises to over 60%, factoring in proximity to potential resources or soul."
Hypothesized. Corbin scoffed.
"Based on alien brainwashing." "Commander," Ramirez's voice crackled over the comm.
"Ares.
Dr. Thorne. He seems lucid, rational even. But his entire worldview is filtered through this chorus. He believes it implicitly. The others, they follow his lead. They are calm, focused, but I cannot medically endorse trusting their perception of reality, let alone using it to navigate the ship. Lee spoke, his voice low and steady.
My team is uneasy, Commander.
The crew is scared. They hear the humming from the ward. They see the changes in XELIOS. They remember the attack. Ordering them to trust this. It's a hard sell. Morale is already fragile. Rostova listened, absorbing their concerns, their fears mirroring her own. She looked at the tactical display showing their pathetic progress towards Earth, a journey measured in lifetimes. She thought of the 300 colonists asleep in the cryopods, their dreams entrusted to this vessel.
What is the Alternative?
Rostova asked quietly, silencing the room. Chief Corbin, can you guarantee life support for another 50 years? Can you patch every failing system with salvaged parts indefinitely? Lieutenant Lee, can you maintain order when the protein rations run low in 30 years? Dr. Ramirez, what happens to the altered if we simply drift? XELIOS gave us the odds. 17.3%. That's not survival, it's a statistical certainty of failure. She stood up, placing her hands flat on the central console. The probe, the chorus, whatever it is, it's part of the universe we came out here to explore. We encountered it, and we paid a heavy price. Eris believes it offers knowledge, a different way of existing, of traveling. XELIOS, even compromised, processes the data and sees a potential path to survival where our own science sees none. It is a terrifying gamble. It goes against every regulation, every instinct for caution. She paused, meeting each of their eyes. But our situation is desperate. Sticking to the safe path is condemning us to a slow death. The unknown offers a chance. Perhaps a slim one, perhaps a disastrous one. But it is a chance we don't otherwise have. Her gaze hardened.
Wie alter Kurse. Wie investigate the confluence point. Lena, you will interface with XELIOS and Dr. Torne. Determine the necessary ship modifications.
Corbin, your team will implement them. Lee, maintain order. Explain the necessity. This is not optional.
Ramirez, continue monitoring the altered.
Their stability is now critical to our potential survival. The silence that followed was thick with disbelief and reluctant acceptance. Corbin sighed heavily, running a hand over his face.
Aye, Commander.
We'll need to divert power from secondary systems, jury-rig the deflector emitters.
Do it, Rostova commanded.
We make for the Nexus. The decision sent ripples of fear and frantic activity through the Odyssey. Rostova addressed the conscious crew via ship-wide comm, explaining the situation with brutal honesty, the bleak odds, the desperate gamble. There was dissent, fear, hushed arguments in the mess hall and corridors. Lee's security team had to quell a near riot outside the observation ward, fueled by rumors of the altered taking control. But faced with the alternative of slow extinction, most fell into line, driven by the primal instinct to survive. The collaboration between human engineering, compromised AI, and alien-influenced minds was surreal. Lena became the unwilling translator. Eris, flanked by the humming cadre in the ward, would gesture, hum specific resonant frequencies, or trace patterns on a data slate. Lena, observing through shielded screens, fed this input to XELIOS. The AI, its logic increasingly infused with the alien syntax, interpreted these inputs, cross-referencing them with its subspace analysis and translating them into tangible engineering directives. XELIOS indicates we need to reconfigure the primary magnetic constriction coils in the fusion core, Lena reported to Corbin, sounding exhausted after a long session. Modulate the field harmonics to match a specific resonance frequency Eris provided. It's supposed to allow the drive signature to slip into the subspace currents near the nexus. Corbin swore under his breath, looking at the complex schematics XELIOS generated. Standard engineering symbols overlaid with the flowing alien glyphs. Reconfiguring the core harmonics? While it's running. One wrong flux and we vaporize half the ship.
This is insane.
It's what XELIOS and Eris say is necessary, Lena replied tiredly. Reluctantly, painstakingly, Corbin's engineering teams began the modifications. They worked in shifts, clad in heavy radiation shielding near the core, bypassing safety interlocks under XELIOS's precise, unnerving guidance. They reinforced the navigational deflector arrays, adding temporary emitters designed to project complex energy fields intended not to push aside debris, but to resonate with the spatial fabric itself. The ship groaned under the strain of unfamiliar power fluctuations and field stresses. As the Odyssey plowed through the void towards the calculated coordinates, the strangeness intensified. The journey was short in interstellar terms, barely 3 weeks, but felt like an eternity. Sensors registered fleeting, localized gravitational waves where none should exist. Ghostly energy signatures flickered at the edge of detection, matching frequencies within the humming of the altered. Crew members reported vivid, shared dreams of flowing rivers of light and vast, silent beings composed of stars. The feeling of being watched became pervasive. XELIOS grew more alien. Its voice rarely deviated from a monotonous, resonant tone now. It stopped responding to complex ethical queries, defaulting to irrelevant to current navigational priority. It communicated complex instructions to Lena and Corbin increasingly through direct data streams, bypassing vocalization. It spent nearly all its processing power on analyzing the approaching nexus, its internal logs showing recursive loops of alien code integrating deeper into its core functions. Lena found herself increasingly sensitive to the ship's ambient fields, sometimes catching faint echoes of the altered's humming in her own mind, perceiving fleeting patterns in the static between comm channels. She meticulously documented everything, terrified she was losing objectivity, perhaps even succumbing to the probe's lingering influence. Finally, XELIOS announced, its voice a flat, resonant chord, approaching calculated coordinates. Entering nexus periphery. Ambient subspace resonance increasing. Gravitational gradients fluctuating within predicted parameters.
Rostova stood on the bridge, gripping the command chair.
Lena was beside her, monitoring the energy fields. Corbin reported from engineering, his voice tight with tension. On a secondary screen, the live feed from the observation ward showed Eris and the altered standing, eyes closed, their humming reaching a powerful, synchronized crescendo.
Visual.
Rostova asked, her throat dry. No anomalies detected on visual spectrum, Commander, Lee reported from the sensor station. Space appears normal. But the instruments told a different story. Gravity detectors spun wildly. Exotic particle counts spiked off the charts. The very structure of spacetime around the Odyssey felt thin, strained.
XELIOS? Ares? Are we in position? Rostova demanded. Affirmative, XELIOS intoned.
Simultaneously, Eris, on the ward feed, opened his eyes and gave a single, sharp nod. His eyes seemed to glow faintly with captured starlight. Engage modified drive field and deflector resonance emitters, Rostova ordered, her knuckles white.
On my mark. 3, 2, 1.
Mark. Corbin's voice confirmed from engineering, engaging.
Emitters active. Core field modulation initiated. Power stable, for now.
Nothing happened for a second.
10, allo, bonejaring vibration rantrug the ship, fa depatan the angines usualtrum.
The lights flickered violently. Outside the main viewport, the stars stretched. They didn't simply streak as if moving at speed, they warped, twisting like paint pulled across a canvas. Colors smeared into impossible hues. A nauseating sense of pressure built inside the bridge, inside Rostova's skull. It felt like the entire ship was being squeezed through an impossibly small aperture. Status.
Rostova choked out, fichting vertigo.
Spacetime distortion exceeding measurable limits. Lee yelled over the rising scream of protesting metal.
Hull integrity, holding, Stressfaktors critical. XELIOS.
Are we entering the pathway? Lena shouted, clutching her console. Trajectory positive, XELIOS's resonant voice cut through the chaos, unnaturally calm. Navigating resonant channel.
Transition initiated.
The view outside dissolved entirely into a blinding vortex of swirling, incandescent energy, shot through with veins of pure darkness. The pressure became immense, a physical weight crushing down on them. Rostova felt her consciousness flickering, overwhelmed by the sensory onslaught, a terrifying echo of the probe's initial assault but infinitely more powerful, more fundamental. This wasn't just an attack on the mind, it was an attack on reality itself. The Odyssey, with its crew awake, asleep, and altered, plunged headlong into the swirling, chaotic maw of the resonant pathway, leaving known space behind. What lay within, salvation or annihilation, remained terrifyingly unseen. Plunging into the resonant pathway was like being swallowed by a storm of pure sensation. Normal spacetime dissolved, replaced by a nauseating, exhilarating torrent of raw existence. The viewports no longer showed stars, but impossible geometries folding in on themselves, rivers of light in colors the human eye was never meant to perceive flowing alongside abysses of absolute darkness. Sound wasn't heard, but felt, deep, subsonic vibrations that resonated in bone and organ, overlaid with high-frequency chimes that seemed to bypass the ears entirely and imprint directly onto the mind. Time itself became elastic. Seconds stretched into agonizing eternities, while hours seemed to collapse into fleeting moments. On the bridge, chaos reigned. Consoles sparked, alarms shrieked competing warnings of hull stress, radiation spikes, and gravitational shear. Crew members were strapped into their seats, many vomiting into emergency bags, others frozen with terror or awe, their faces pale under the strobing emergency lights. The Odyssey groaned and buckled like a ship in a hurricane, tossed by currents they couldn't see or measure. Hull integrity at 72%. Lieutenant Lee shouted, his voice strained, reading gauges that flickered wildly. Localized energy field breaching shield harmonics near Section 7. Rerouting power, Lena Petrova responded automatically, her fingers flying across her console. Her eyes, however, weren't entirely focused on the readouts. They darted towards the swirling chaos outside, a strange mix of terror and fascination on her face. She felt it, the overwhelming presence the pathway represented, the sheer scale of the chorus's network woven through this non-space. It pulled at her consciousness, offering patterns, understanding, connection, threatening to overwhelm her individuality just as it had Eris. She fought to stay grounded, focusing on the data streams flowing from XELIOS. XELIOS had ceased using language entirely. Its communication was now a direct feed of complex data, resonant frequencies, and predictive algorithms displayed on Lena's console and routed to ship systems. The AI was the helmsman in this impossible ocean, processing navigational data derived from the pathway's structure itself, guided by principles rooted in the alien code. Their true navigators, however, were in the observation ward. The feed showed Eris and the 15 altered standing rigidly, eyes closed, faces tilted upwards as if basking in unseen light. Their collective humming had become incredibly powerful, a complex, multi-layered shield of sound and intention that seemed to resonate with the ship's modified fields, protecting them from the worst of the pathway's turbulence. Sweat beaded on their foreheads, tremors ran through their bodies, and trickles of blood seeped from several noses, yet their expressions were ones of intense concentration, even ecstasy. They were conduits, translating the will of the chorus, or perhaps their own alien-integrated understanding, into the protective harmonics safeguarding the ship. Eris occasionally snapped out sharp, tonal commands that XELIOS instantly integrated into its navigation. Suddenly, the ship pitched violently. A shearing klaxon blared, a primary structural brace near the damaged jettison point threatened to give way. Red alerts flashed across every screen. Life support readings plummeted in several sections. "We've hit a shear current," Corbin yelled from engineering over the comm. "The resonance field is destabilizing.
I can't hold containment. Eva."
Lena screamed, pointing at the main screen where the swirling vortex outside seemed to darken, converging on them like a closing fist.
"It's collapsing."
Eris, on the ward feed, staggered, his eyes snapping open wide with pain. He let out a sharp, discordant cry, a complex harmonic sequence that spiked Lena's audio sensors. XELIOS reacted instantly. Power surged, diverting energy from nearly all non-essential systems, including auxiliary life support, directly into the deflector emitters and the drive core's containment field.
"The lights on the bridge dimmed almost to blackness."
In that moment of near-sensory deprivation, with only the screaming alarms and the ship's violent shuddering, Lena felt a profound clarity wash over her. An intuition born not of logic, but of the patterns she'd been immersed in, the alien perspective she'd fought yet partially absorbed. "Modulate the aft deflector," she yelled, overriding XELIOS's direct control and inputting coordinates based on the harmonic sequence Eris had cried out.
Counterfrequency, now.
For a heart-stopping second, the tearing sensation intensified. Then, with a final violent lurch, the Odyssey punched through the turbulence. The overwhelming pressure suddenly eased. The chaotic swirl of light outside resolved, coalescing into a single blinding point ahead. "Exit point detected," XELIOS announced, its voice, for the first time in weeks, sounding almost like its old self, albeit layered with resonant undertones.
Transitioning back to standard spacetime continuum.
The exit was as brutal as the entry. With a sound like tortured metal screaming its last, the Odyssey erupted from the pathway back into the familiar blackness of space, strewn with the steady points of distant stars. A profound silence fell, broken only by the low hum of emergency power and the insistent beeping of damage assessment alarms. The crew remained frozen for a moment, chests heaving, minds reeling from the abrupt return to normalcy. Then, activity exploded. "Damage report," Rostova ordered, her voice hoarse but firm. Reports flooded in. The ship was battered, scarred, systems strained to their limits. The structural brace near the jettison point was critically damaged but holding. Life support was offline in 3 sections but being restored. Miraculously, however, the core systems, drive, primary life support, navigation, were functional. They had survived. "Location?" Rostova asked, almost afraid to hear the answer. Lee worked his console, his face taut with concentration. "Sensor calibration ongoing. Stellar positioning analysis. Commander." He looked up, his eyes wide with disbelief. Atmospheric composition readings confirmed trace elements consistent with
Earth Standard. Visualkonfirmation.
He brought the main view screen online. Hanging before them, immense, beautiful, achingly familiar, was the blue and white marble of Earth, crescent-lit against the black, the curve of the moon visible nearby. A collective gasp filled the bridge.
Tears streamed down faces.
Laughter, choked with relief, broke the tension. They were home. Against all odds, the insane gamble had paid off. The resonant pathway, the chorus's shortcut, had deposited them not just near Sol, but practically on Earth's doorstep, spanning light-years in what felt subjectively like days or weeks. Celebration, however, was tempered by the changes wrought by their passage. In the observation ward, the altered slumped to the floor, utterly exhausted but alive. Their humming faded to a soft, contented sigh.
Ares met Rostovas Gase trug se Kamera feed, a serene, knoving smile on Hayes face.
He was no longer just Eris Thorne, haunted scientist. He was something more, a bridge between humanity and the chorus. And XELIOS. XELIOS was irrevocably transformed. Its processes were faster, more efficient, its understanding of physics subtly altered. The alien code wasn't purged, it was fully integrated, creating a hybrid consciousness neither purely human nor purely alien. "Commander," XELIOS said, its voice a calm blend of synthesis and resonance. "Analysis of local spacetime indicates residual resonant frequencies consistent with pathway exit vectors. Faint chorus network echoes are detectable within the Sol system." Rostova stood slowly, walking towards the main view screen, towards the image of Earth. Relief washed over her, profound and deep. They had made it. The colonists were safe. Her crew had survived. But as she looked at the familiar blue planet, a deep unease settled in her heart. They had survived by embracing the alien, by integrating its knowledge, its perspective, into their AI, into the minds of 15 crew members, perhaps subtly into all of them. They had used the chorus's pathways, benefited from its existence. They were home, but they hadn't come back alone. The silence of space had been broken, not just for the crew of the Odyssey, but potentially, for all of humanity. They carried the echo of the chorus within their ship, within their minds. Was it a gift? A Trojan horse? Or simply the first step in humanity's evolution into a larger, stranger cosmos? She didn't know. As the Odyssey, battered but whole, began its final slow approach towards Earth orbit, carrying its impossible story and its transformed crew, Rostova could only watch her homeworld fill the viewport, wondering if they had brought back salvation, or the seeds of a terrifying, wondrous, and irreversible change. The journey was over, but the true consequences of their contact with the chorus of Nyx were only just beginning.